Hi, everybody. So, in this lecture, we are going to be talking about your next essay, which is an evaluative essay. So, I'm going over the prompt for you today. So, this is our essay packet, and I just realized I started on the second page instead of the first. This is the first page of our essay packet. So, here you've got memes to ease the pain of writing, because those are fun, followed by our prompt, the rubric, and then a sample essay so you can see what the end result should look like. All right. So, our evaluative essay is all about evaluating different sources and discussing what they bring to the table. So this is something that you might be pretty familiar with, but remember that we're doing things, in a little bit of a particular way for our class. So here's what we're doing. Before you start writing, you should read and annotate the assigned articles for class. And for this particular class, we are talking about how popular culture affects our sense of self. There are also a number of videos, and many of those are TED Talks, so make sure that you watch those as well. You'll be working with both the articles and the videos as you write your essay. So you should read and annotate the assigned section of the textbook as well, just to make sure that you're familiar with how to write an evaluation. So once you've done those things, then you want to use the resources that we have read. And what you're doing in your essay is looking carefully at how each resource informs us about that particular issue. So your goal here is to analyze and explain how the authors or speakers go about convincing us that there is a relationship between pop culture and how we see ourselves. So in your essay, that's what you're looking at and discussing. And you'll be looking at how each source persuades us to believe their claims about that relationship between popular culture and our sense of self. So as you get into these sources, you'll notice that each one comes at this from a different perspective. They might be talking about different effects and different types of pop culture. So you'll need to sort of manage those things as you put together your responses in your practices, in your discussions, but also in your essay. Goals for the essay. Remember that you'll be examining each source individually, explaining with evidence from that source how well that particular source presents information about the issue at hand. You should include basic information here, so you want to include what type of source it is, the full title, their overall claim. You should mention the authors, but then you should also be making some judgments about how well the source presents its information. So, how persuasive is it? What kinds of rhetorical moves does it make that, make it either a persuasive argument or maybe detract from its persuasiveness in some ways? You should also be making meaningful connections between the sources. So we want to explain how each one is relevant to the overall topic at hand, but we also want to look at how they build on and react to similar issues, between those sources. So you should be making some connections and doing some synthesis here as well. And then make sure that you're using evidence from each source effectively. Introduce it, cite it. In MLA, use that quote sandwich method that I'm always, referring you guys to. All right, basic requirements for the essay. You will be submitting some plans and some sort of draft things for this essay, just like any other. You'll also be submitting your 3+ page first draft of the essay. Participate in those revision workshops, and then submit a significantly revised draft, which is 6 to 8 pages. So this is your final draft page length. And then remember that we use MLA for our formatting. Okay, that brings us to our rubric. So remember that this is what I use to grade the final draft. Remember again that for your first draft, you get an A for effort just for turning that in. I will then give you some feedback, and I also encourage you to work in your groups and to go to tutoring as you're revising. And then once you turn in your final draft, this is what I use to grade it. So 10 points come from just your basic requirements. Is it the right page length? Do you use MLA? And do you clearly stay on topic? Then you get up to 30 points available for evaluating those print and media sources. So these are the articles and videos that I've given you. That's what you're evaluating. And you've got up to 30 points available for that section of the essay. As you're completing your evaluations, you should be using complete and cohesive paragraphs. So this is where you get credit for that. That's up to 20 points. Make sure that your paragraphs are each, sufficient self-standing paragraphs, but that they also work together to present your overall evaluation of the different sources, right? And then you also get 20 points available for connecting those sources. So don't forget to make those connections between the sources because each one does come at this in a different way or talk about different types of, popular culture or different effects that they see that popular culture having on us. But you should be able to draw some meaningful connections there between the sources. So 20 points there. And then your use of evidence is worth another 20 points. So again, make sure that while you are connecting sources, developing your paragraphs, and completing your evaluation, you are using evidence throughout that process. So give examples, pull evidence from all of the sources that you're discussing, cite those appropriately, and make sure that you are using that quote sandwich method so that you're not just leaving quotes hanging, right? So your use of evidence is from you actually commenting on and explaining that evidence, not just throwing it in there. So that brings us to a total of up to 100 points possible, and that is the rubric I'll be using for this essay. Lastly, you have a sample essay here. This is an actual student essay from, it looks like 2019. And all of the student essays that I do include, first are anonymous, right? So you can't see who exactly wrote this. But these are all successful essays that I have had turned into me and then that I asked, hey, do you mind if I use this as an example? So these are definitely going to be like your A and B papers, students that are, working really hard and doing a lot of the things right and have turned in really solid essays. So this is a good thing to read and take a look at. You'll notice that for some classes, you are not talking about human trafficking. So for this English 3 class that I'm teaching at the time that I'm making this lecture, for example, you might have a different topic. That's totally fine. They're still doing a lot of the same things, right? Just with a different topic. So no worries about that. So you can see that sample student essay there. Don't forget to check out the rubric so that you know what you're working towards. And then also the prompt for all of your direction about how to do this. As with any of our other essays, don't worry, we will be practicing this stuff in class. I'm always available if you need to speak with me for some extra help. And don't forget to rely on your groups as well as some outside tutoring. Tutoring is available online during the pandemic, or if we're post-pandemic by the time you're hearing this lecture and you prefer to go in person, that works too.